Out of all the movies Marvel has put out in the last couple of years, Eternals is probably one of the most interesting ones. As we move into Phase 4 with all these new characters and all these new settings that the franchise is introducing to us, I think Eternals does a great job at introducing not only these 10 main characters, but also a different part of the Marvel universe that we saw in films like Guardians of the Galaxy, some of the Avengers movies, which is the cosmic part. I think that is one of the most interesting things about the MCU, and I like this movie. And it does it in a great way. It not only introduces these characters and it's kind of like a mess, but it also makes sense in a cohesive way. So I'm gonna go analyze like what I liked, what I thought could have been better, and basically just share my thoughts on this movie because I thought it was really interesting, especially with Chloé Zhao, which is the director. I love her work in Nomadland, and I liked her work in this movie, and I think she's a really great filmmaker. So, anyways, without further ado, let's go on with my review of Marvel's Eternals. So for a movie that needs to handle over 10 different characters plus several secondary ones, I think it did it in a great job. I know it's not easy to do it, especially with the time constraints. I think the movie had to kind of like balance time between focusing on the characters, their individual abilities, their individual fears and personalities and backstories, and also move in with the plot, which I think is really interesting, and I'll talk about the plot in a bit, but I really think that each one of the characters had a good job at being like explored and explore their past and what their implications in the whole story. So in the beginning of the movie, the story follows these characters who travel to Earth. They're creations of this god Arishem, who sends them to battle these creatures called the Deviants. But that story only takes up a small part of the entire movie. Then later, the plot becomes more existential and more towards basically covers like religious themes and biblical themes about like obedience to this higher power, like following the destiny and or suffering the consequences if they don't obey Arishem's orders, which basically spoiler alert, but involved destroying the entire Earth. And so like the conflict that emerges from that like really showed me a lot of existential themes about like obeying your religion, about devotion, about kind of like obeying this higher power or kind of like rebelling in order to save the humans that they grow accustomed to and living with them over millennia. So I really enjoyed that. I think that was a really awesome thing that we don't see often in the MCU. We don't see like these perfectly crafted, I want to say like intellectual stories, because there's also like this really long section that covers like several minutes of basically an exposition scene that with some really nice visuals reminded me of Doctor Strange, but explained these like cosmic elements of the story. And that was really well done. And this type of storytelling reminds me that Chloé Zhao is a really good writer and a really good director because she had some of this too in Nomadland. I noticed that this movie feels more cinematic, more like kind of like Oscars type of movie. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, this movie feels more sticking to that style of movie making, which is more like intellectual, more kind of like long. Reminded me. It also reminded kind of like Dune, kind of like those science fiction movies that are slower, that have more time for people to reflect. It was really cool because also like in the classic Marvel fashion, it also balanced that with humor, and there's a lot of humor in this movie. There's some really funny characters, and yeah, I really like that part of the movie too. The story wraps itself in a really good way too towards the ending. I think the final scene, the battle between these characters, was really well done, and I think like the seeing all the powers interact with each other and the fighting and everybody using they kind of like take alliances towards the end. So I'm gonna spoil a little bit, but yeah, like the characters come to a disagreement. Some of the characters fight for saving the planet. The other characters fight for obeying Arishem, and it just leads to like a big conflict towards the end. But I really enjoyed it. I think it wrapped itself perfectly. Obviously, it ends with the good guys winning, saving the world, and the ending just kind of reflects that classic Marvel thing that is like the good guys are always going to win, and we just have to see that. And but I think it was good. I think it was well executed. Everything that came before was also really good. And yeah, I really don't have many complaints about the movie. I think it would have been better to kind of like make it shorter. I think there were some scenes that prolonged themselves for too long, but it felt balanced. I think the movie's it's also a really long movie. It's like one of the longest Marvel movies. I think it was 2.5 hours, but it was still enjoyable. So yeah, anyways, I liked Eternals. I think it was a good movie, and yeah. So those are most of my thoughts on Eternals. I really like to see a sequel with these characters and also see them interact with other characters in the MCU. I can't wait to see what other characters from the comics Marvel introduces into this franchise. I think it's going to be a lot. And obviously, I can't wait for Spider-Man No Way Home next month. Definitely going to make a review for that. I'm definitely going to watch it day one. And yeah, Marvel Phase 4 is really gearing up to be a great franchise. So yeah, anyways, yeah, that's everything for Eternals. I'm going to give it a 75 out of 100. It was good. It could have been better. I liked films like Shang-Chi. I think it was better. Definitely better than Black Widow. I didn't make a review about that movie, but because I didn't really think it was that outstanding, or I don't know, I just didn't feel like making a review. It was just kind of like the hype kind of died out after a year, with the pandemic and all that. But anyways, but yeah, that's all my thoughts on the current Phase 4 MCU, and yeah, that's everything for today. So I'll see you guys and have a nice day.